So it is 6:34 p.m. The select board exited executive session at 6:28 p.m. But now we will go ahead and approve the agenda for this special meeting of the Waterbury Select Board for Tuesday, January 20th, 2026. Is there a motion with regards to the agenda?
I move to approve the agenda.
Is there a second?
Could I
Yep,
say something?
Sure.
Yeah. Is there a way that you could take off the approval of the minutes for the January 12th select board meeting? Because the Orca recording has no sound about a little bit less than 15 minutes in.
Yes. Yeah.
Minutes.
The minutes are on the website. So you can ask to have it taken off consent, Sandy, if you want, if the select board wants to discuss it. I will say in practice, we are approving written minutes, not a recording.
Okay.
So Tori made a motion on the agenda that Kane seconded. Is there further discussion or motions?
Respectfully, I'm just inclined to edit my motion just because it is based off of the typed written minutes. I'm not saying through video.
Other questions, comments on the motion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Great. Now we will get to the consent agenda, and any select board member can request to have something taken off if they want. But the items on the consent agenda are the minutes of the meeting January 10th, minutes of the meeting January 12th, and then 3 liquor permits, special event permit for Smuggler's Notch Distillery on Friday the 13th, Expedition 6 LLC special event application, and Expedition 6 LLC special event application, I believe as part of Winterfest. Is there a motion on the consent agenda? Motion by Kane, second by Tori. Is there any further discussion? Mike?
Just a note to everyone, the camera for Orca is not working.
They're bringing me a card.
Oh, they're bringing you a card? Okay, so at least maybe part of it might not work, so
Well, he's gonna use the Zoom.
we do have a Zoom recording, so just for people's knowledge.
I would also just formally request Orca to look into their video recording from January 12th. The January 12th Orca recording, apparently the sound goes out after 15 minutes. So if you guys could look into it, that would be great. Thank you.
Who's Chris for the record? All right. Is there any other questions of the consent agenda? We had a motion to approve by Kane, seconded by Tori. Right. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right. Next up is public comment. This is an opportunity to comment on anything that isn't on the written agenda. We ask that folks keep their comments under 5 minutes. And if you need more time, we're happy to consider you for a future meeting item. Is there anyone in the room or online who would like to speak on public comment? And if you're in the room, we ask that you come up to the table just so we all can hear you. It looks like Sandy online. Are you clapping and raising your hand?
Yeah. I've asked quite a few times, both in person and by email, to add the Zoom meetings onto the website. And the January 12th meeting without sound is another reason. I actually had a person contact me, that a resident that is unable to attend the meetings. And so she relies on those, and with no sound 15 minutes in, that's pretty bad. So, I mean, I don't know if we're paying Orca, but I would have thought that they would have reviewed that before they posted it. And if we are paying Orca, I'm not really sure why we are, if we have Zoom recordings that we can easily post.
So Sandy, we can put a link in the minutes to the Zoom recording.
Okay.
And so that can be updated in March.
That would be great. Thank you.
And I will state, I'm not aware of us paying Orca. I believe they just come as a public service. So other folks who would like to speak on public comment? Right, no other public comment, last call? Alrighty. Next up, we have our next agenda item, which is update on municipal staffing. As folks are aware, Tom Lights is leaving us as our municipal manager on February 2nd. The board has been doing a lot of work to make sure that there is a plan in place for next steps for that. The update for tonight is that I am very fortunate to announce that Bill Woodruff, our Public Works Director, has agreed to serve as interim town manager to help support this transition time. I think it's an incredibly generous offer of him, owing to how much he loves the town of Waterbury, noting that he was also appointed the interim manager for EFUD, knowing that this will be a position that requires support from other folks and that there's already been retired municipal employees, Tom himself, other folks who have offered to help support Bill Woodruff in taking on this role. We will formalize this with a contract and other agreements likely at our next meeting on the 27th, but just wanted to provide that as a public update this evening. I'm happy to have other board members speak or provide comment if they have anything to add. And he's here, and I would just say thank you. And a haphazard round of applause.
Don't take offense if I leave right after this.
Yeah, and he's excited to get out tonight while he still can. Is there any other questions or comments? So again, more updates to come, but just wanted to share that publicly with where we are at this point. And again, I've said a lot of superlatives, but truly I think I've heard only universal positive regard for Woody and everything is does in town, from staff, community members, all of the above. So we just really appreciate it. And again, more next steps to come, but that's tonight's update.
I'm happy to help out. I think it will provide some continuity. Excited to meet the staff. I hear good things about some of them. Mainly the Public Works Director. Thank you. Good luck tonight.
Thank you.
I see Sandy laughing, so it seems like you picked up online, which is perfect. Thank you, Woody. We appreciate it. And again, more to come. We'll have this again on our agenda for the 27th with more formal contract and other detailed updates. All right. Any other municipal staffing updates to share? Tom,
Just want to note,
screen, please.
the library has filled a circulation assistant position. And today we made an offer to a deputy director in recreation.
Awesome. Thank you, Tom. Any other updates? All right. I will move us to our next item, which is review Randall Meadow bond vote primer and primer. Tom has been going strong through his remaining time in Waterbury, and this would be one of those items. So we have town meeting warning on the agenda later for tonight, but we've talked about the need to share publicly everything that's going on, and Tom has put together some documentation, and I will turn it over to you, Tom.
I just wanted to write up something about the bond vote. Just because I think even those of us that have been at this table for a while, we get a little bit confused about the process, why we have to do it now, and all the background. So I put together what I thought were answers to the relevant questions and the questions I've been getting from people. But as I've said before, things I've written up, there's no pride of authorship here. I just tried to explain how this is going to work in broad strokes, so we can understand what we're voting on a little bit better. And then at the end, the map, I want to give credit to Dana Allen to put that together for us, but that's a rough overview of where the excavation would occur. And on page 1, there's a link to the website, which has some additional detail, but I just thought it best to put something together in advance of the public vote that could be disseminated.
Okay, thank you again. I think it's great to have this all together. Do board members have questions or comments to share?
So ideally, this would be posted online and at a town meeting, like what?
Posted online, something from. Something published there. The question I've heard over and over is, why do we have to bond for 4.3 when we already have a grant? Question I've heard over and over is, okay, if we have the grant, and that's going to pay for all the costs, why do we have to do this in a year when it's not grant? So I tried to answer those questions.
I think you did an amazing job on this. I really appreciate your work on it. I do think it hits a lot of the questions that I feel like we've repeatedly. My only nitpicky take it or leave it edit would just be to add another little enter space so that the titles on each page would be the items.
Yeah.
That's the only input I have.
Other questions, Roger?
We're gonna need to generate some awareness and support for this in advance of the third town meeting. And I think there was some discussion of having a meeting or a hearing on the 17th. Is it just on this, or is it? I think that could be the opportunity to give people adequate notice, get this out, and then have a public hearing on this issue to generate more support for people coming in. At least better awareness whether they support it or not. Better informed about it when coming into town meeting.
So, I will say in kind of answers your question that the legal voters of the town of Waterbury are further notified that an informational meeting will be held on Tuesday, February 17th at the municipal building in the town of Waterbury at 6:30 in the evening for the purpose of explaining the proposed improvements and financing thereof. Such meeting will be available by Zoom as well.
So being clear, we have to, because it's a bond vote, have an informational hearing, which is February 17th. We will also have a meeting on February 2nd, just a regular select board meeting.
But leaving on front porch forum is very good.
And did you have more follow-up on that too, Roger?
I just have no
Oh, our town has a Facebook page. Can we put it on the Facebook page as well, please?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes, we're working on the Instagram bit,
Instagram might be tricky.
well, there's backstory there, but don't ask.
Yeah.
Working on the Instagram and also the news feed through the website, not like the major alerts, but the news feed can also, because that goes out to people's emails.
That would be great.
So anyone who subscribes would be another.
It's like literally any method you
Yep.
have to info blast would be wonderful.
You got it.
Other questions or comments from board members? I think taking off my chair hat, my one is on the how and when will it impact my taxes? I wonder if we do a little compendium with like the spectrum of options. I know I think Chris and others have said this, but like if we had to bond for 1 million, if we had to bond for 2 million, or I guess you're saying this is 2.3. So that you gave the worst case scenario, Tom. Is that fair? in
Yes,
this?
that's. I tried to give the worst case scenario on purpose because I feel like it gets a death to do otherwise.
Mhm.
And then I also tried to, the very last page, the last part of the last page, to note that there's some risks or some downside here that comes with this one.
If this passes, when would you envision the excavation taking in?
I would expect it's 18 months of study and permitting. I would think excavation would likely be something like 2029.
And then how Contract with the farmer runs through 27. This year. So we plan this year.
Other questions or comments from the board? I see Sandy online and then 3 in the room. We'll go Martha, Peter, Lisa in the room. Sandy, go ahead.
I was just wondering if we could add posting that on the Front Porch Forum as well. Thank you.
Martha?
It says 5,000 truck loads. Could you make that over what period of time? You know, ballpark line.
Yeah.
I know, it just,
I'm not sure I can.
Yeah. I hear you. It just seems it might solve this, or, you know, once the project's actually in construction, how much time? Or is there gonna be 5,000 trucks, 24/7?
I feel like that's tricky because, and some, you know, feel free to weigh in, but I feel like it might be tricky because if we like start the project in October, it's like a 3-month thing, but then the ground gets frozen, so then you have to wait until spring.
Weather
Like,
dependent.
it'd be tough to put a thing on it, I think, especially since we don't have like full understanding of who even doing that and their contract.
Maybe even a sentence then that is, we'll work with the community or the contractors to determine, and that will be forthcoming. I mean, just something to soften the 5,000.
I guess I'll push back a little bit. I'm not sure it's gonna be very soft. And I would expect the contractors to be about production, so when they're hired to move this material, they're gonna wanna do it as fast as they can. I don't know what that timeframe would be, I don't know how many trucks will be involved in excavators, but I would guess they'd want to do it pretty quick.
Well, it also depends on where they're gonna put it, and that hasn't been identified either, so I absolutely get it. I just think talking a little more about how you'll get questions.
Perhaps within that last sentence, we said, it says, before proceeding with the final project, close analysis will be done to ensure the road damages are minimized, et cetera. What if we did to ensure the road damages and time schedule? Or something like that. Like the time, on the last section, on your, are there risks and downsides on that last paragraph? So we,
Okay, road damages are minimized and the length of time is.
yeah, road damages and time. Length of time. And that's, would that help? Would that be something?
As long as, I think what my point is, that something you're thinking about, you'll articulate what the timeline will be, this work is gonna happen. We'll know that better from the contractor.
In like 2 years.
I'm seeing a note that the audio is bad online, and I'm sorry, we're not getting an unstable notice here in the room, so hopefully it's doing the best it can be online. Are you good, Martha? On questions?
I'm done.
All right, yeah, Peter, you were next.
Yeah. So part of this is in the background. I want to be kind of get to the bottom of this, the evidence. Right, so it says that it'll reduce it 0.4 to 4 inches to 1 foot. That's based on a 50-year flood. Which is what, around 421 feet above elevation, 2022. So I mean, I think people may be thinking that it's 1 foot at a 100-year flood, which according to the study is not true. Yes, and that was in that. And so, I mean, I hope people don't have expectations, right? That it's going to 100-year flood, take it from 427 down to 426, and everyone in the area would be okay. So it's really, I think that maybe the 4 inches to 1 foot should be put at. project, what's the elevation?
Basement.
Because that's what we're over here, the window.
Yeah. I'm around.
Okay, so yeah, this could help, and if it takes it down a foot, and you're at 419, and then it's just flooding back to the field. That's all, I just want to be sure that people understand what this one thing is, because I think that gets thrown around. That's all. I just wanted to-
Yeah, so I guess it's a question for the select, but I tried to be not super specific because the full analysis will be done as part of the grant, which is going to
Right.
fine tune this number. So I thought 50 versus 100 might be a little bit lost in the shuffle, so I just think that should be considered.
But does that affect the 240 million from what Mr. said, would affects?
I think that's a general look at that, for sort of everyone in that flood.
Okay, that's good. Okay, I mean, that's all, I just.
I have no problem specifying the modeling that was used. I mean, I think we're being upfront. This is the modeling done by this term. You can say 4 inches to flood for a 50-year flood. I don't think that makes it a not compliant project. So I think putting the specific, I have no problem including specificity.
The columns place without their 1 foot of flood relief. Their parentheses for a 50-year flood mark.
Other questions or comments, Lisa? Continue.
Town report. Whether this is in the town.
So why not?
Yeah, sounds like a great idea.
Other questions, comments, Chris?
Mentioned before. Let's say the warrant goes in front of townspeople on town meeting day and we. There be another vote to. All the research is done and the engineering is done, would then go in front of the public again. For we know the specifics. What costs will be second, way to the apple on this? Or is it the select board's decision after that? That's the whether or not to pull the trigger.
I think that's covered in paragraph 1 of the Y 4.3 million. That says, at least to a partial extent, that if the grant funds are later withdrawn, while this is a very unlikely possibility, the select board would most certainly pause the project if that were to happen. So to me, it sounds like the trustee select board can do at that time. But happy to have Tom correct me.
Well, my concern about that is the public's not gonna know all the information going into the bond vote. So they'll be voting kind of blind.
I agree, but if you, I think unfortunately it's outside of our jurisdiction. If you'd like to complain about the federal grant process, then you have a couple representatives that you could call at a higher level.
So also just like, so we can strategize. Let's let Tom, so my understanding is this is giving a bond, this bond vote passing is giving this or a future select board the authority to issue the debt in this amount. If that select board wanted to hold an advisory vote or an advisory special meeting, they could, but they would not be required to, is my understanding. So to your point, we've had boards in the town of Waterbury before that said we will or will not take action without a vote, but it would not be necessarily legally required, but
Well,
it's,
to some degree, I think it works both against you and perhaps for you, depending on how people look at this, they don't feel that they got all the information to know the ramifications of this project, so they may decide against it.
Right.
It can go, so that's, and it's up to the public how they decide to vote on this, so I'm not trying to push it one way or the other, I'm just suggesting that a lot of people be going into the same line there and be in their best interest.
The other thing I'd add is there's, I'm sure, going to be a future select board vote or two related to additional grant opportunities. Those may or may not become very requirements. I can think of one big grant that the town is pretty well positioned to get, and that's in water service provider funding. Secondly, I think the history here is anytime there's something like this that's getting closer or coming to fruition, a series of community meetings that go with it. So I can clearly envision something like a meeting at the fire station to say, hey, we're getting closer. And I'm sure those immediate neighbors are probably going to demand also one of the select board at the time, there's 5,000 trucks that can pass their houses.
Yeah, that's the other thing, I mean, the 5,000 trucks, lot goes into that equation. How many trucks a day are too many disrupt the normal activities of the village. Impacts the roads as well. 5,000 trucks will spread out over 2 months or 2 weeks, it's still 5,000 trucks.
Roger had a hand up and then Kane.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, you know, the history when we were, had the issue of, whether the shelter was gonna go in at the armory, we had a large public meeting about it. Future select board would do the same.
I'm gonna press up on the owl. Sorry to be disengaged. Go ahead, Kane. I'm gonna press the up button and we'll see what we can do. It's at 100. Kane.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment on a macro level, to some of Chris's points. Since 2023, trying to figure out. We've been talking about Randall Meadow, I think, since 20. And since 23, since the two floods of 23, 1 and 24, the common theme coming from the community to the select board is do something, right? Whether, you know, we had those big meetings post-flood in 23 where everyone came up with all sorts of ideas, and this is the idea we landed on. And while we're not gonna have all necessary information until we get into Randall Meadow and start doing the analysis, it's worth it to us, in my opinion, to answer the call to do something. And this bond vote gets us so much closer to doing something than doing nothing, right? So even if a voter doesn't have every single piece of available information, at the very least, they know we're trying to do something.
I also think that, I don't want to be a Debbie Downer, but we don't know, even between now and a couple of years from now, we could have another big flooding event that could really impact Randall Meadow. So we don't, you know, there are some definite unknowns, because a lot of things can change on that piece of land. So I think this bond is trying to look at what the particulars are now, and we're planning for reasonable unforeseen. And if it changes, yes, we may need to look at something else. Thanks.
Other questions or comments from board members? All right, we're troubleshooting the sound, which now has static. Tom is running the owl and doesn't have the owl out.
Is it the owl?
We're doing,
Is it-
it's the owl. Sorry for the distraction. Does anyone else have questions or comments on this? Great. It sounds like we have some next steps. Oh, I'm sorry. Was there a hand? Perfect now. Hooray. Just needed a reset. Is there any other questions or comments on the Randall Meadow opportunity? It sounds like some minor edits from the board for Tom, and then notes about places we would like this shared, noting that we have a hearing coming up on the 17th, also on the town website, Front Porch Forum, Facebook, variety of forums for this as finalized. Any other questions, comments, Martha?
You got one that, it says I in the very beginning, and you might say town manager, or considering that you won't be there.
This document authored by?
Yeah, it's a little
Yeah.
vague.
That's fair. I like that. Thank you for catching it. Maybe we just say we, because it says we throughout the rest of this, I think.
With the artist formally known as.
I think there is some stupid like grammar thing we were missing. There always is, if it's longer than 2 pages, honestly.
It's like really obvious.
Yeah, and I will just say for why bond vote now, I just want to make sure that the language there exactly matches the award level. Yeah. I think my other note is under the why bond vote now, just making sure that matches the award letter exactly, just in terms of the, which I think it does, but I just want to double check. Any other questions or comments on this? All right, I will move us on if there's nothing else on this item. All right, next up, we have review of updated budget draft. At our last 2 meetings, we had a lot of questions, comments, input on the budget, and Tom has done some revisions to the budget that we have previously looked at that we have to review and have some impacts to the proposed tax.
Yep, so I didn't include the full 30 pages in the package, just those sections that have changes. But the guidance from the last meeting was to get the tax increase to 2.7%, and so that's where we are at. Couple things changed in the positive and negative to get there. So the first is, and this is highlighted in that first page, minor tweak to court fees because the budget that was proposed was a bit below actual revenues the last couple of years. So a little bit of a revenue gain there, and that's in line 7. Using a little bit more fund balance than originally proposed, but still a very rational amount given how much we have. Very minor changes to general government expenditures. Very minor changes to some recreation expenditures. And then special articles, I had a plug number of 60,000 in the drafts, anticipating a couple petitions that didn't come in. So that final number is based on the actual petitions that have come in. And so that all nets out to the 2.7. One piece to note on the expenditure side, the town is contracted with North Star Fireworks for years. Fireworks last year were $14,000. North Star has been bought by a big national company. Fireworks are all subject to tariffs, so the fireworks went from 14 to 20 grand, which is a.
That drone show's looking pretty good right now.
Told you, I told you.
So the rough quote I got for a drone show was about 4x that.
Dang it.
So I asked the question, I didn't press beyond that.
Oh, fair.
So we'll all go to New Hampshire and buy some rubber kids.
Not a bad idea.
So I did plug in the $20,000 for fireworks. But it's a meaningful change. And just to give a little more detail, so I talked about corpse fees and how they changed. In general government, tiny tweak to health insurance after double checking everything and doing it. Was in the town's favor. In the final general government page of that works. In rec, there's also a tiny tweak to salaries and insurance, because at the time this was based on staffing. Assuming we have that job filled as of January 1st, but we didn't, so it still gives plenty of room to hire that person according to the schedule we want. but it just acknowledges that, we're going pretty much January without filling that job. And that's really all it changes there. On the paying insurance for small amounts. So nothing really big had to change. The other number that changed, I'm sorry, back at here with the second page. Grant list growth, I mentioned before that we average 1%. The draft budget had 0.7% growth, which was the lowest we've had in the last 10, 12 years. So the updated draft has 0.8%, which is still really safe because that 1% is our average, but I think we're in another good year. Is really safe, and that helps a little bit. So I think in the end, pretty safe at that 2.7%. And the special articles was a bit of it. So no major tweaks. It was really a summation of items that took around $25,000 off the net.
Board members have questions or comments on these changes that are being proposed?
So, I mean, it's looking like the main cut was red, just a little bit.
Just a little bit, and that was just because we had budgeted the full salary and fringe of the deputy.
Okay.
So cut a month of health insurance out, cut essentially a month of salary out for that position. Doing it quickly, but obviously not everyone.
Okay. Thank you.
Are there questions or comments, Kate?
Yeah, tell me more about the special order for cap.
So I'm not sure what phrase I used. I had in the draft $60,000, just based on some conversations with the board and others about what we anticipated getting. And so it was 42 last year, but we had heard about some potential big ass. So the 50,132 is what was formally provided to the clerks as of the deadline, which I believe was Thursday last week. So those are these ones. Well, I shouldn't say the ones that would go in. Those are the ones that have been traditionally funded or formally petitioned for funding.
And we have a whole chart that Carol does made us so we can review what people got in the past, what they requested, all of that, but that's the same right now, is that 50.
It's Memorial Day, July 4th, 2072. Sorry, $40,720 for fireworks. Is that?
Yeah.
You should really take a poll.
I would also like to just note for anybody, I'm not saying, for anybody listening from the American Legion, love the request so that you can record the defibrillator. I think that's super important. ATDgrant.com, you can actually apply for money to get that and get a response in 1 to 3 weeks if they want. Just a thought.
Other questions on the updated budget draft? I would say it's not in front of us. I am noting, I think we only have $5,000 for equipment for natural disaster. I think we funded that out of local option tax. So if we want them to get the trailer, which was $5,000 and put anything in it, I think it's increasing that to like, the full request was 10,000, but maybe 7,000 or something. That was one from earlier rounds of edits.
Yeah, I seem to remember 7,000 was the trailer.
had 8,000 for the trailer. I don't know if they can revise that down. Originally.
I think that's in local option tax, but before we finalize that, we'll just need to have what we want the final number to be for the warning. Oh, sorry. go ahead.
Are we still doing $1,000 as being, all those ones being included? $10,000.
That's up to you.
Okay.
That's entirely up to the board. You approve them or don't approve them.
I know there was some comment about, you know, some people wanting a little more control. I know you've done that to try to economize the meeting, especially for a number of requests that are $1,000 or under. And people do still have the right to, you know, make a motion to exclude, you know, any one of those or reduce them from one's 1,000, make them 5. So I would leave it, my personal opinion, I don't think it's judicious to leave that. I don't know if there's something need to be put in the warning that these can be.
I'll also note, we have town meeting warning on the agenda tonight
Right.
after we review all these requests, so we can look at a
Discuss that
draft
then.
and, yeah, decide how we want to clump them, if you will, for lack of more technical term. Do you have any?
Oh, I was gonna say the exact same thing you did. No, that it's on the agenda to discuss.
Other questions, comments, budget tweak notes? Thank you, Tom, for the updates. I appreciate that. We're coming forward with something that's at that 2.7%. And seems realistic and reasonable.
Thank you for bringing the number down to that.
2.7 is SSI, right? That's not.
Right. Well, there are all sorts of numbers that should come up with what the inflation rate is. A lot of them are pointing right. So,
CPI is 3.33.
That's what I thought.
Questions or comments from the board on the draft budget?
I'm just gonna, just for public record, I will vote to advance this budget as drafted, but I do have major concerns about budgeting below the rate of CPI inflation. You know, those are major concerns of mine. I feel like we're gonna fall on in later years if we don't budget to inflation. But to advance this budget.
Budget?
I think it's consistent with the discussion that we've had. We have had a lot of discussion over the past couple of weeks about this. And I think that's falls right into the routine.
Also just in, if I'm understanding this wrong, let me know, but I feel like there were very few cuts without. What are we going without?
You're not going without much, and part of that is the paving plans. No, that's fine, that's it. Not going with much, it's really.
And I would note, we've funded a ton of things through local option tax. I would just say, like, the question we've had is, you have $900,000 in new revenue, and like, yes, we used it so we could continue to deliver really robust programming and not be asking for a substantial tax.
Eliminate some debt that helps.
And eliminate debt. Right, other questions or comments on this? So in terms of next steps, we have warning on the item for discussion later tonight. we need to total all of these numbers so that the final total number gets into the warning. Shall the voters approve big dollar number for all of the various buckets? We would approve that on the 27th. Tom will work on putting those together, assuming we don't have other changes. Rebecca Ellis, our town moderator, has agreed to meet with me to review it, just to make sure she's comfortable with everything. Carol Dawes, who will help with the special articles, will be in tomorrow, so we will do some background arithmetic and making sure everything lines up if there isn't other changes besides what we make tonight. Any other questions or comments on the updates to the draft budget? Alrighty. I will continue us on then to our next item. This is review outline of allowable uses for proposed natural disaster reserve fund. So as part of the broader budget, we talked about putting $14,000 of local option tax funding to create a natural disaster reserve fund that could be used for flood response, both staff time, infrastructure, and other things. To quote Lisa's 2 words, town report, I think it's important that we have an outline of what that fund could be used for, because we have to have, as part of the warning, creating that reserve fund and then also funding it. So that's what this item on the agenda is for, is to discuss that. I don't know if we have anything written, or we just need to talk about it and have something finalized for next meeting.
Nothing written for that. Couple concept to kick around, because I know there's a general desire to grow that fund over time. Something that is commonly used, and I think the state of Vermont does this for their pension, which is underfunded, is that if the state has a surplus, a certain amount of that surplus at year end goes to deal with the pension deficit. So I believe local option tax numbers are conservative by design, but you could consider a rule towards that if there's a surplus in the LOT fund at year end, that percent goes towards funding this reserve. And then maybe we don't need to necessarily appropriate funds into it every year. I was looking at the physically.
Do you have questions? Tom said you looked quizzical. Okay, just a look, no
I
problem.
was just, the brain was thinking.
Is this agenda item to discuss parameters for how residents can apply for the use, or how we would fund it, just so I can better understand the conversation?
I think it would be parameters with which the money voters put in it could be spent.
Okay, so, I mean, let's dive in. Do we want to restrict it to only, not rental units? We want, do we, yeah, or yeah, we can start smaller. Do we, or bigger? I mean, do we want to restrict it to public or private residences? Can it go towards shops or just residences?
I'm noting some of this came out of Danny Kalman's presentation on January 5th, that I think is when we funded this. So we had the Natural Disaster Preparedness Committee response budget is where this 14,000 came from, which I can screen share, but the budget she had included things like dumpsters, Vector trucks, personnel, both the like response time and public works, inventory restock. So I think, Tori, you've raised some of the good questions, which is one, I think we should name if it's just floods as a disaster or if it's multiple types of natural disasters. I think municipal response is implied unless Tom would recommend for some reason against, infrastructure or staffing. And I think the question for the board is, again, this question of like broader community support for individuals or businesses.
So I would say I think we should apply all disasters, but do we need it to be, how do we define would select board need to vote for it to be considered a disaster? Would it just need to have mobilization of the disaster response committee for it to count? Like, what?
That's all.
You could rely on the governor's.
Or rely on the governor.
That
Um,
takes forever.
So.
Okay, Mike had his hand up next and then him. Mike?
Or were you thinking of, when you said public and residential, were you thinking of, I see it as three parts, as residential, commercial, and municipal.
For what buildings could be serviced?
For what we would use reserve funds for.
And would we make a determination of, would we have to do like a priority, or just say like if your rental in your unit is not, does not have anybody residing in it right now, like if it's an Airbnb, then you're out, or if it, you know, like.
I'm thinking that this is about emergency more than long-term recovery. And I don't see any particular reason why we would want to tie our hands to a particular restriction, because we can't really envision exactly what a wildfire would look like, or whether it's gonna be a 24 flood or a 23 flood. So I don't, we've got a reserve amount of money, which would be great to have on hand, so we can get in dumpsters if they're needed, vacuum trucks if they're needed, culverts if they're needed. I think you have to just rely on the level heads of the future select board to make those decisions and not try to guess what the need is going to be.
So should we at least say that the select board needs to declare it a disaster?
Yes.
Kane got skipped over twice. Go
Oh, yeah.
ahead, Kane.
Yeah.
I know.
I would say that the committee is forming the response corps. The response corps will need to be funded in the event of disaster and before disaster. They're gonna need trainings, right? They're gonna need to eat during a disaster, and the water and hazmat suits and equipment, and all that equipment needs to be acquired somehow. I'm hoping that we get pushed through on this initial funding. But in future years, the amount of resources that it takes us, like just in the war room during a flood, is immense. Not to mention the amount of volunteers that need to be kept track of, and the folks managing them, and those folks need to be trained every year to prepare, right? Say we go, God willing, 4 years without a disaster. We still need to make sure that people are prepared to act in the face of disaster. So those trainings need to keep happening, and funding for the trainings and the equipment for the trainings need to happen so that the trainings can happen. So I feel like when it comes to buckets or how this should be spent, yes, it's going to be spent during a disaster, but there are dollars that are going to need to be spent before that, so that everyone on the ground knows what they're doing.
So maybe, sorry, did anybody have their hand up?
Mike has his hand up.
Yeah, I've had this discussion multiple times with Gary Dillon, our emergency management person. I've always been concerned of, as you said, the lack of potential training and stuff ongoing. I'm sure the fire department, they have really good training and it's ongoing. Police, I'm sure via the non-state police, they have training. But I think like the natural resource group and other people who probably need to be prepared for different events, I think would be a good thing to provide that, as well as keeping our emergency management plan.
Sorry, go ahead, and then I have a comment.
What if we said that the funds were to be used for training, equipment, and personnel costs related to preparation and response to a natural disaster?
Seems good general. My question for Tom was gonna be if percentage thresholds were allowable, like if there could be a policy where, I think tax stabilization has over a certain amount, but not wanting to constrict ourselves, where we could say, 10% can be used for ongoing training, and beyond that, you need a motion from the select board noting it's a disaster or whatever. Or is that overly cumbersome?
It's a bit cumbersome, given the amount of funds you'll have.
Roger?
I thought that Danny presented us with two different budgets. One was for the equipment and training. Her own stipend was a separate operating budget. And then this was to be for the relief response. Was my understanding of the different buckets here. And I thought that we were talking about the relief response bucket here. But if it doesn't cover training entirely, whatever we particularly against using some of the money for training.
So if I could, because I have a budget on my screen. It included equipment rental, which would be something like dumpsters, Vector truck, industrial dehumidifiers. Personnel, which would be the event response coordinator, as well as overtime for public works staff. Inventory restock, that wasn't necessarily included in year one, just like as an idea of like.
Yeah, gonna use the stuff and stuff.
And then she had another section that said other, that was ongoing training and community events, which I imagine would be something like where they did that workshop on how to run the suction things in the pool. Oh, thank you. Or maybe just like education on how to, move your utility box out of your basement. If kind of stuff like that.
Household litigation.
Yes. Do we want to put any restrictions on who can ask? Is this like, okay, maybe I'm not understanding this right. Can a regular resident ask for this to be spent for their benefit, or is this purely for the natural disaster response committee to have and use within the guidelines that we provide?
I think the intent was the latter. I'll just name what everyone's seeing is the real-time messy thing, which is we have not had a set select board policy. So we've dealt with flooding many times. The municipality has come together and done what needs to be done and helped support local volunteers and partnered with nonprofits. And we've done what we need to do on the infrastructure side. But as far as I'm aware, it's been ad hoc. And so that's why this conversation is looking like this, also because we don't have a draft in front of us. So go ahead.
Oh, sorry.
Well, I was gonna also add that if a declaration is, a federal declaration is declared, then a lot of the municipal expenses do get reimbursed fairly quickly. Which would reimburse the fund. The sense is that we would have the money on hand to spend, there wouldn't be any reticence to get the equipment needed for that immediate relief.
Somebody else, I have that one up there.
Yeah, just talking about reserves. Say if we're lucky enough, there's better relationships with Canada, Canadian people come, I'm dreaming a little bit, but
To be straight then.
no, but, say we have a really fabulous, season of tourism and we have a lot more money coming in via LLP funds. I know these funds are important for our natural resource recovery, but I think there's other places that a surplus can be spent to.
Right, but I think this discussion is the allowable
Right.
uses, not how we fund it.
Right.
Would we want to include a caveat that this is not intended to help people towards long-term recovery and for immediate response?
Think that makes sense. And I think
That's all.
the big question is it individual and municipal? there are things like dehumidifiers that we will not ever be federally reimbursed for. So if we want to have a policy where that's a thing the town provides and we allow the use of the fund, that's fine. I just think it's something we should write it down.
Well, it's in the budget.
Can I, can I draft a policy for us? for
That would be great.
Next meeting? So right now I have, generally, it would be for training equipment and personnel costs related to preparation and response to a natural disaster. The natural disaster must be declared by select board. If a national disaster is declared by the state or federal, then they should have to be required to apply for payback. Its costs are not supposed to be used for long-term recovery, but for immediate response. Did I miss anything?
The training, we would want to do even if there was no declaration of a disaster.
Yeah.
So I don't think we want to have fire disaster.
Right, or at least a clarification between that.
So. Coordinator, I appreciate the language. So for that forward.
That's a wonderful.
Jordan, feel good on next steps?
I'm not like, this is not gonna do about the funding. Not touching that part, but yes.
Yeah. And I will say we can have what we have. I think we can also have a draft available at town meeting day for folks. The language of creating the fund is the same whether or not. That's.
I will-
Does anyone have any other questions or comments on this? All right, let's jump to organizational funding requests and past funding history. Credit to Carol Dawes, who put this table together, which includes on your far left, the amount a group was approved for in 2025 at town meeting. Tom checked and all 42633 was invoiced for and paid by the town of Waterbury, is that correct? So we paid out all that money that was approved at town meeting. Then you'll note we go over and there's the 2026 request. You can see if it's an increase, if there was a petition, etc. So this is many select board members have asked for this, so who's getting what are the requests and the like. And then we can talk about how that looks on the warrant.
Can you remind me what it means when it says in annual report? Is that just like it got grandfathered over?
Yes, I believe in the annual report were like the requests that went out from what folks received last year, like, do you know? But I don't know for sure. So with the exception of some new petitions and some noted in orange, most folks request level funding. And then- no, go ahead.
I don't fully understand, I'm probably just missing something, the Waterbury Area Senior Association. In addition to GF, I assume it's general fund budget.
Yeah, so there's an amount in the budget that's embedded in the budget. That amount has been unchanged for some years, I believe.
Mhm.
And the senior center has requested increases over the years, and the increases have gone to the voters and kept going to the voters.
Okay.
So to my recollection, it was a fairly sizable increase 2 years ago.
Mhm.
And this year is it level?
No,
Well, that's my question, I guess. I thought it was 30,000 in the budget, but maybe I'm wrong.
right. That's something I want to show.
Senior center.
Oh, no, 32.5. So in the general government, we have 32.5, which is the same as the 23, 24, and 25. And so the balance would be.
Realistically, how much time would it add to not group these? Are we talking like hours? Or-
I can pull up the draft. Here, I'll send you the poster.
Right, they all have to get read. Someone comes up and testifies. Takes at least 5 minutes. to get through.
Sure does.
So I'll have the draft, I guess, noting that we're moving to the review of the draft warning. Last year we did all that were 1,000 and under as one item, I believe.
1,500, I believe. 1,500.
Due to concerns raised about. Thousand, not 10,000.
Can Kane speak up or move closer to the microphone? You can't hear him, or I can't anyway.
Cindy, I recommended that we group articles that are under $1,000, not $1,000 and below.
Thanks.
So just an FYI, that's 7 articles. So assume a half hour, 40 minutes.
We have this in a Word document. I just have to do it the same way.
Wait, at 1,000 and below or below 1,000?
Below, because it's always been or it has been 1,000 and below.
Well, apparently we did 1,500 last year.
Why can't we stick with things? Sure.
Yeah, I would say a lot of these organizations probably planned upon their request if they were thinking it's gonna be at that $1,000 threshold. And they would have made it $999 or so, something like that, or $950, so.
Particularly if it's not.
Sure.
So by my count, I got 6 for the 11,000.
Yeah, but there's.
So we would group 11.
I'm just saying it's like
1,000
kind of
and below.
doubling, yes.
Yeah. I don't see any reason for people's lives to. Level up.
And if someone wants to, that's where my conversation came before, if someone wants to exclude a group or,
Yes,
do
we
that,
can always say.
or, reduce them to 500 or whatever they choose. I think maybe that should be made clear on the form.
Okay, so this is the language we had for the warning itself with the clustering. That is from this table. So I want to make sure I'm following the select board's direction here. This clumping is, I believe, under 2,000. So because these next ones are 2,000, but we have,
Yeah, so we went up to 2,000.
well, this is the 2026 draft, to be clear, which I believe Carol did modeled off of what we did, but I think you're correct. So there's 2,000 here. So I think we did everything under 2,000 for one. So if the board would like, we can take, I'm hearing that, all the 1,500s, of which looks like 3 of these would come out.
I think I'd like to go and ungroup. Oh, and then if it's above, then it's individual. I think we've heard numerous times complaints about grouping. I think changing it to grouping $1,000 and below, and then the rest individual, while it will lengthen the meeting, I think it's hearing the requests of the voters. I also think that's fair, because don't hold me to it, but at some point, if I am sitting there and we are debating $250, I might just offer to pay it if we're on the 5th hour, so. Yeah.
Help reduce the budget.
Right? How annoyed can we get Tori?
Do you want to make a motion in that regard, Tori, if that's the
Yeah.
recommendation?
I move to group the special article funding requests so that items or requests at $1,000 and below are grouped together, and the $1,001 and more are listed individually.
As well as new requests or increases. Are individual.
Yeah.
Is there a second? Motion by Tori, second by Mike. Is there any further discussion on this? All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
And
I'm opposed. Any abstentions? All right.
I'm a member of one of the $1,000 donors.
Okay, well, I think that notwithstanding, the motion passed.
Well, no, without a second.
Yeah, Mike.
How can you second it and?
You could second anything, second just moves the thing along, doesn't mean you're a good parliamentarian.
I voted to put that one. Yeah, you should full recusal right now.
Huge.
all right, would one of you like to take the second from
Second.
Mike? Thank
Yeah,
you.
you did. I would be glad to change this.
Reflect in the minutes that I seconded.
Great.
All right,
Thank you.
motion by Tori, second by Kane, the outcome of which being the board will group 1,000 and under as one item, things that are over $1,000, a new request or an increase will be voted on individually on the warrant. Is that
Okay. If
What-
anybody complains, they were all loving town meeting and their chance to be heard, so.
Pendulum will swing the other way.
I say for the record, I was a no. I think that we spend a lot more money on a lot more things and they should get more time for debate. So that is my personal opinion, not my opinion. Sure.
So given that the vote already happened before all of this, is the motion passing 4-1 or 3-1 and you're abstaining?
3-1.
3-1 with one abstention.
Thank you.
Do we have other questions on the organizational funding request? I'm noting that I did it. I thought we were getting a request from WADA. I left a phone message the morning of petitions were due with their executive director. I did not hear back. So I have no idea what happened, but my understanding is they were going to petition and they did not. And I'm just saying that. But otherwise, I think it sounds like with the exception of everybody wins, we have the numbers we need. Any other questions on organizational funding requests?
Is there a, what's the order of the remaining articles?
I vote.
Should we go to town meeting, review draft town meeting warning, which is up on the screen currently?
Yes.
Or is that what you meant?
Yeah, I guess that's what I meant. I was just wondering if there's a process for
Yes, if I,
prioritizing which of these goes first.
is it by money or alphabetical?
I don't know. It looks like they're alphabetically within each category, but I don't
Right.
think that's been our past practice.
Can you scroll though, like, once we get past, okay. I would propose, like, so for the 1,000 group, I'm inclined to, those all get alphabetical, and then it goes like in money and then alphabetical. for the individual. Like for the,
You try to
Big money
say the
first?
highest-
Like there's-
highest
like
dollar
there's-
request to go first.
let's see. Oh yeah, should big money go first? Or I'm just thinking like
So
there's,
neutral on this issue. matters. I think by the time we get to Article 20, everyone's gonna be ravenous anyway.
All right, and just go by off.
Well,
Finance.
I think you're right that people's attention and patience get strained towards the end of the meeting. So I would think that we would want to put the larger disbursements to the top, because those are the more important ones in terms of our impact the budget.
As I said, neutral, whatever you want.
So would you do like,
I second that.
so would you do like children's room and like all the individuals and then the clump of under thousands? Or would you do the clump of
I
under?
would do the clump of 1,000 and under first, and then the largest amount of the largest individual request, second largest, third largest. And so forth.
Glad to make that motion. Is there a second?
Any idea?
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, we will redraft and rearrange this. Again, the purpose of discussing this tonight so that we have it in the form we would like it by the 27th. Let's see, shall I scroll back up to the top? Is there any other questions pertaining to the special articles? This wasn't posted, as you can see, this has a draft watermark, but just noting that as drafted, the other things we have is the standard article about electing a moderator. We have this year 3 articles pertaining to Australian ballot, so all of the town offices, the Harwood offices, and then Article 4 is the bond item. The bond voting is again by Australian ballot. Then we start with our town meeting articles. We have reports of the officers, claims for compensation, tax warrants. Tom, I don't know if you've reviewed these dates with staff. yet?
No.
Okay, so we'll check with staff on the dates for tax due. I know we sometimes try and stagger that with EFUD. This also has a 4:30 PM deadline. We had changed it to 5:30 PM and it sounded like maybe that wasn't really used, but I'm noting that's something we need to decide for the warning.
Yeah, I don't see any reason keeping staff here.
Article 10, flooding events should be changed to natural disasters.
So yes, you'll see Article 9 is a placeholder with a lot of amounts, as was noted, that Tom will fill in. And this had been the previous language.
And I hate that language I always have.
What, Article 9?
I thought Article 9 and then the second article are funded. Fundamentally don't make a lot of sense. The moderator's been clear in saying the guidance is that capital fund should be voted on separately. But if you put your amounts here, sounds capital, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense because it's not the full tax levy. And then if you scroll down to Article 14, you're either approving the budget, which includes transfers to the capital funds, but then if you go down Article 14, what? Or if you change Article 14. Or you can specify portions of taxes, property taxes raised in each. So I think the way to do it is that it should say in the first article, including the amounts, they somehow have to be linked. I don't know how you want to do it. Every town does it differently. Many towns just have, do you approve the budget, basically? And it's the whole shebang. Yeah, so I think it's possible to satisfy that, to have the article word fairly extensively, just to make it clear you're approving capital and operating these amounts for operating. I think it makes a whole lot of sense to have 2 articles not even following each other that are both has been Waterbury's tradition.
As Kane said, I'm agnostic on the order. This is a save as of last year's warning. And so if there's a better or different way to do it, I don't know if that budget should go last. And I mean, I will say, I know the local option tax is weird. We've conveyed that to voters. It's against what they recommend and we're gonna do it anyway, is my feeling. If we should do that up front and then do,
I can talk to council about the wording for Article 9, but I envision Article 9 as reading, shall the voters approve these amounts, including amounts transferred to the capital funds? And then in Article 14 or whatever it is on the capital, you could say, you've essentially approved the budget, taxes raised. If you modify this, please understand, it comes from taxes. And I think that's fine.
I don't have an opinion right now on the wording, but I do see the reasoning of if they are split to have them at least be like 9. Yeah.
What's your argument against that?
I think they should be linked in one article. It's not Waterbury's.
So the only negative argument that we know of right now, I'm not thinking them is that it's how it was always done.
Rebecca Ellis went to a moderator training, and I think it was recommended best practice. People should know that if they modify amounts of Article 15, amounts of Article 9.
Which would have already been approved.
Right, so.
didn't we just take them out of the numbers for Article 9? I guess my question is, or is it because of
then
the
it gets
total?
even more confusing, I think.
I could see the reason why the couple would be.
I want more time to think about it. But check it out for the week after it.
She'll be here at 11 a.m. tomorrow and we can have the fight. No, I'm just kidding. But I mean, this is what we were doing on a Saturday last year, pre-town meeting, just texting Tom and saying,
I mean,
what
I
is
will
the
be here
number?
at 11 if you don't want to probably asking.
The only reason that it's written like this is because it's always been written like this. Has there ever been a valid reason given why it was decoupled in the first place, or has it just always been decoupled?
Well, Tom said
I mean,
it was recommended as best
true.
practice in the training.
And I'm sure Rebecca has additional reasons as to why it's best practice.
I kind of want to hear why it's best practice. And if she can't explain why it's best practice and it's just because they say so, then I'm going to feel a lot differently than if she has clear reasons.
Yeah, I'm a fan of
That's crucial.
So with the rest of the highlighted section, other than Kate's edit about. Wasn't the Article 13, wasn't it supposed to be, were we planning on a period of 4 years and we just giving ourselves a buffer with that 5?
Yeah, I don't know if Tom has looked at this yet. This is the fire truck that we're paying for from local option tax, but we will need to issue debt to purchase. So it needs to be a motion to issue the debt, but you're right, we could do.
I just thought that was on what was the budget was for.
Yep, that was the plan.
I think I'd like to change it to where this is that's in the presented budget. Have that confusion. Whoever is running the Zoom, chat, just to make sure we're not missing. If that's,
But I don't see anything in the chat.
And I think the simple resolution, just to close it to article, is to say, shall the voters approve these amounts with this estimated amount of raised property taxes, with this estimated tax rate, subject to changes voted in articles 10 through.
Tom, in the option that Rebecca does not have a good reason for not coupling them,
I'm sure.
can you draft some language for us, just in case?
And I'll note, we're not looking at the motion language, so before town meeting, we also have a separate document, that's the script that has, in terms of not always doing things the same way, I loved when we had the long flowery language that said, shall the inhabitants appropriate funds for the purposes of laying out roads? And then we went away with that and just said, shall we appropriate to highway? But just to name, there's the other piece of it that is the actual motion language that we will read on the stage the day of, based on the warning that I think in some cases is more specific. All right, should I stop the share? Is there any other questions on, again, these 9 through 13, that's now out of order and needs further follow-up? For 15, we've noted these will all be 1,000 and under, everything else will be separate and will be in descending amount of expense. Oh, sorry, I can do a slow scroll. Sandy, do you want to talk while this is up on the screen? Go ahead.
I think, well, I was gonna dig up that dead horse that I keep beating. Because I still don't see anything about the housing task, the housing trust fund being added as an article, so that it's officially its own fund.
How you could change the language to housing reserve fund, correct?
I can't hear you.
I was just making sure that I was correct in saying that the language would be housing reserve fund.
Right, but it's still a separate fund, and if you
Yeah.
want to be able to leave the money in there year to year, it has to be a separate fund
I
approved.
see what you're saying, Sandy. I was just trying to get the language correct.
Oh, okay. All right, I just think it needs to be added so that we know the money will always be there, and we can add, and the select board will be able to add to it if needed. Right now, the way it is set up, it's technically not even there. It's still in the local options tax, and until we make it a separate fund, anybody can take it, then request it to be used for something else.
Looks like Tori has a hand up.
I agree with Sandy, and I think we should just mirror the language that's used in Article 10. If that statute even applies, though, but something similar we put together for the housing reserve fund.
Money from the trust to the reserve. The existing money from the trust to the reserve fund. Is that something?
Would you like?
I mean, we've named it Housing Trust Fund this whole time. There's no reason not to still call it that. I mean, that's what it's been called, and you can say allocate previously, expend it. So it's not actually giving more, it's taking what's already been allowed in the previous year. It was added, it was in last year's budget, or even before that, that previously allocated, move it as a separate trust.
So the select board has the option to put this on the warning.
Screen, Tom.
So the select board has the option to put this on the warning. The challenge, as I see it, is Tori's gonna, for example, draft a natural disaster reserve policy or guidance. I think housing is simply a pretty open-ended question about what you wanna, what do you consider investment in housing and affordable housing. So I think it's,
I think the housing task force outlined the spending. When we pulled out the trust in the first place. I think that policy can still stand.
Right. Yeah,
I will say, I thought.
right,
about
the
this was-
select board approved that.
Yep. Yeah, we did outline some allowable uses. I will name, I had concerns that, we all saw how the natural disaster conversation went tonight. And I'll just be candid, like, as a human who's trying to do a lot of things to keep the municipal government running right now, I did not put this on the agenda because I did not think we had a clear or coherent policy or time to review. I have no objection to creating the reserve fund and doing it with existing revenues. I think that's fine. I think we have $25,000 in local option tax spending proposed that is ostensibly to support housing at Woody Ave and Stanley Wasson. So in my mind, if we're creating a housing trust fund, we should ask those expenses. It just all snowballs pretty quickly is my personal hot take. So I have no objection to creating the reserve fund. I think it does provide clarity. I think the allowable uses is complicated. But we can do a special meeting or figure out a way to do it before the 27th.
I would just add that I think, legally speaking, correct me if I'm wrong, we are just creating a reserve and we are moving the money from the trust into the reserve. Or still calling it a trust, I suppose. What has been discussed at meetings involving that money, its uses already would be assumed to still be the uses moving forward. Trust is reserved.
I'm gonna check with council on this, but I think your warning to somehow specify reserve housing trust is really open-ended. So I think you've got to be careful in what you write there. I think natural disasters is also open-ended, but pretty well understood by the community, given that we've been through a bunch of them. But I think any people in this room will have different ideas about how to make a housing building in this town. So I think you've got to somehow come up with agreed upon language there. Because once it's in the warning, it's legal, it's not policy.
I can take this on for the 27th.
I kind of, as,
Sandy, did you have something?
well, I'm concerned for one thing right now, we are talking about maybe changing from the Waterbury housing improvement to something else, but if somebody was to apply, technically the way it's written in the local option tax, even though there's 170, I think it's 175,000 in the fund, technically it's not. And if that was emergency, that money that needed to be taken, it can be taken out of local options tax. Even though it says it's housing trust fund, until it's actually a real fund that is separate, as long as it's used for the uses that are listed on the local options tax, it can be taken away at any time. I mean, it's kind of like Tom said about taking what's not been used and putting it back, to make the budget better. So, I mean, it's still open to that, and it's hard as far as the housing task force, I feel, to make a commitment when you don't have committed funds that are guaranteed. Because right now in the local options tax, it's not guaranteed, even though it's written in previous budgets. If it's not used by the end of the year, it goes back into the fund, which is the local options tax, which is a real fund because that was, the voters voted on it. And if we make this a voter approved fund, then it's, it's forever. The fund's there, and the housing task force can use it and, they don't have to worry about it being taken away. It's guaranteed.
Thanks, Sandy. Roger?
But they can only use it for the uses that are approved.
Right.
And is that, do we want that to be forever?
I think this is a little bit of an auditor's question. You know, they have the generally accepted practices. And I think from my knowledge of financial management that it would have to be specified. The reserve would have to be specified somewhere and identified as to what a reserve and or trust is for. So I think I see where auditors might have an issue if we didn't have that definitively. So
They had it in the past.
if an auditor would have.
It might, current auditors for which we have a contract for,
Especially with a new fund like this, they might have some sort of intent.
the voters create a new fund, they have a different opinion. It's an issue with the data.
I mean, the town of Stowe has the same auditors, and
And Sandy, respectfully,
yeah.
Tom Lights is our municipal
Yeah.
manager, and we as the
Yeah.
select board are entitled to request an opinion of our municipal manager and our auditors, which may or may not be different from the town of Stowe. Again, I have no objection to this. I
Right.
just am saying for the record, the board talked about this, the board discussed it, and in part because the future of some of this is uncertain. So whether or not the specific funding rolls over, we could spend fund balance for the use appropriated for the housing trust fund to fund the program. And given that we had questions about if we're even gonna have enough uptake, putting it in a lockbox has pros and cons. And so I think in that moment of uncertainty, there actually was a compelling reason. Some of us said, don't do it. And so again, if we wanna do it, I'm completely open to it. We're juggling other things. Anne has her hand up.
Yeah, I agree with Sandy. If we're going to have that, it should be a separate fund, and it should be made clear. Because just lumping it in with everything else, you can wiggle around with the money. You know, maybe we won't get as much money some year. So I agree with Sandy. I think really it needs to be pulled out as a separate entity and not clumped. My 2 cents.
Thanks, Anne. Sandy, I think you had a follow-up.
No, I was just gonna ask if Tom could speak up because I couldn't even hear what he was saying.
Oh, okay. Tom, can you repeat it? And I'm sorry, I know that owl isn't rotating. The laptop doesn't have the app and I don't know why.
Just saying that the auditors had no issue with the select board allocating some of the local option tax in 2024 that was unbudgeted, unplanned towards housing, and they've had no issue with so far what was done in 2025. So from their perspective, everything we've done is perfectly fine. From my perspective, everything that's been done has been perfectly fine.
Chris, go ahead.
So I gotta agree with Alyssa on this. Define forever. There's a lot of misnomers right now about this fund. Doesn't seem like there's a lot of applicants for it. I think the approach that you've got right now is fine. If you were to make it budget line item through town meeting vote, and it didn't work out, didn't go anywhere, how do you undo that? Is it simple defunding of that line item and shifting the money into something else, or does the select board have the authority to just, when
If there's a formal reserve created at town meeting day, the select board only has the authority to spend for the specific purposes outlined by the voters. The select board cannot eliminate the reserve on its own. They have to go back to the voters at town meeting day or a special town meeting to unallocate the funds.
I think it's too early to get into get that 100% right now. Let it play out for a little bit. If it works out, and necessary fund for the future, then the voters get approval.
And just to be clear, there are no funds in the 2025 budget towards the housing trust fund. There are funds for projects that are housing related, but nothing specifically for the housing trust fund, because $175,000 in prior years was allocated. And none of that has been spent.
Other questions or comments on this? The board members want to consider a draft at the next meeting, and Dean has offered it. We've had discussion and comment. Roger?
I propose that we do not create a housing reserve fund at this point.
Second.
Motion by Roger, second by Kane. Is there further discussion?
So if this passes, Kane will not be proposing the policy.
Further discussion?
I'll add that I think Chris's point and to something that Tom noted is that years of existence so far, we've not spent a dime. It is public knowledge that I sent a proposal to the task force to look at about how the funds could be better spent in the face of building costs and not that we would get for the housing improvement program. So locking it into this reserve fund with specific criteria may hurt the chances of changing the way we spend that money when it comes to housing.
I'll just say, I feel like the intention of creating its own separate fund is to protect that money for that initiative, and that a policy could be developed to clarify different messages.
I can certainly write a policy on the fund as it exists now.
It's your baby, I'm not gonna.
I can certainly outline what its original goals were, what its current use is, and what its later uses may be.
Evan? And then Mike?
If I understand correctly, just because you create the fund now, it doesn't have to be tied to this particular program in this particular way. This person, you could create the fund and say it could be used for any sort of housing development programs in the future.
I think it would depend on how the policies get back to this.
Yeah, but if you created it with that more general policy now, you could use the fund for protecting the funds and also not tying yourselves to this particular.
I have the same understanding, so.
No, I think that's right. I think we can create a reserve fund. When you create a reserve fund, you need to say why you're doing it and what the uses are through some sort of policy, which could be a huge spectrum of things. So, Roger?
It seems to me like that's more right and exactly.
I think town manager's concern is that the auditors will want a fairly specific policy. I don't think we really know the answer to that yet because we've had the money and we haven't spent it. Given the fact that we haven't spent it shows that we respect the fact that the money should be used for housing and we just are waiting to find what use for it. The current situation has worked for us so far. We'll just stick with what we are.
I'm for Roger's motion. I don't think we have a definitive solution to this. Maybe we will in the near future, but there not being a very definitive solution right now, I recommend.
We have a motion by Roger and a second by Kane to not create a specific reserve fund right now. Is there further discussion or questions on it?
Well, I respect both of your points. I do think, and I do believe, as Tori said, it is my baby. And protecting that money so that a future select board would need permission of the voters of the town of Waterbury to spend it on something else. Now, even with through auditor's lenses, right? Can't be particularly broad, but a broad policy on spending, as long as it has to do with housing, development of such, which I can take under as a project before the 27th. With all that being said, I do trust in the process of the Housing Task Force and the council of Joe Camarada and how instrumental he's been in creating policies for that money thus far, and would probably look at his advice for policies going forward.
Before we vote, can I just have a repeat of what that motion was?
The motion was that we not.
I did say.
We all understand the motion. We ready for a vote? All those in favor, please say aye. Any opposed?
Nay.
Oh, good, I get to tie break. It's so fun. It's 8:21 p.m. I'll vote no, so we get a draft for the next meeting, and we could still decide to put it, to take it off the warning on the 27th, but let's at least prepare a draft so we have it. Reasonable?
Yeah.
Sure. Okay. All right. Any further discussion on this? Right. Next up, we have a special event permit, unless there's any other warning notes prior to the 27th.
Yay.
All right, shout out to Tori for helping to put this together, because another thing we spend a lot of select board time on is various special event requests. And so we work to put all of the things together in one place so people would know it. I do want to make sure, I know there's been some liquor permit stuff that Karen Petrovich brought to our attention, and want to make sure we have the right
Yeah.
info. Yes, please, let me just turn it over to you.
Yeah, so yes, one small to do that was in the goals, that is done. Ideally, hopefully, it is long, it is a lengthy permit, but it does hopefully cover everything. One thing that was pointed out to us, thank you Karen Petrovich for this, was just to fully clarify that section B with the State of Vermont Department of Liquor Control would need to be done through their portal, not through our town clerk. So I did actually update the permit after it was posted, unfortunately. But the update basically says on the first, all right, hold on, I'm not gonna do this from memory. On the first page, where it says, if you answered yes above, please include section B special event permit. There is a following sentence that says this step must, in capitalized letters, be completed on the Department of Liquor Control portal. And then for good measure, on section B at the heading, also in bold and same giant type matching section B, it says to be completed on DLC portal. Just to help make it extra. Like I said, it is long, but I think it covers everything. And realistically, a lot of events won't have to complete all of this, but at least if they come here after looking at all of it, We won't have to say, well, but did you do this section? Did you consider this? Whatever. And if they read the application, they can say, like, coming back to us 5 times.
Thanks, Tori, for helping to put this together. I know I've been mentioning it at many a meeting. My only question is on, if you are planning to serve alcohol and anticipate over 100 people, you'll need security or law enforcement. And just thinking about events we get, I just want to check with the board that felt like the right threshold. Because I feel like we've had breakfast events or events on Elm Street that probably have 100 people and might have alcohol, and are we now requiring those all to have security or law enforcement?
Security.
Or 500, but I mean, I'm fine changing it.
I even think 150. I just think 100, like 100 people actually happens pretty quickly in my
Yeah,
opinion.
that's
So I think
pretty-
we want an event permit. I just didn't know about the immediate needing security.
Yeah. What's the maximum capacity?
With seating. Sorry. Living room? Sure, we have the fire department standing room. Somewhere, but I don't know.
Let's see. So I'd be inclined to do.
We need to update our ZA, which I think was noted previously. Maybe we just take the name out.
Yeah, just have it be, also I would, as much as I love for Gary to be here forever, well, I think we should just take the names out of each position and just. Okay, so I'm changing that to 200. And next up, any other changes?
Just wondering. Do we? Try to find a way for events that are gonna potentially have 100 people don't serve alcohol. And are not going to involve road closures. How much bureaucracy?
I think I'd still like for them to have to notify us. Right? Okay.
An example,
Yeah.
when the school, at the beginning of the school year, has their ice cream social, they invite all the parents and all the children. Is that, I mean, there's these, several hundred people, 400 kids, 300 kids at school.
Right, and then the parents come.
And they're just serving ice cream, but there's a lot of people gathered in one place with that.
Yeah.
Right?
But wouldn't we want to know about that in case there's like I mean, I'm just thinking of that example, all the cars that would park along the road, and I know our fire chief really hates
If
that.
you have a bonfire at your house,
You're inviting 100 people?
I would think to go to the town for an event permit. If I was having a private property in Waterbury Center.
And I would point us to sentence 1, public entertainment.
Right.
So
That's
I'll
what I'm
just name,
saying.
like, for background context, this is from a village entertainment ordinance. So when
Right.
the village stopped
So-
being a village, we inherited this bizarre entertainment permit that candidly, I'm not sure we've ever been enforcing. In theory, live music at all of the venues in town should have received an event permit. If that has happened, we're gonna not go there, but I think it's fair to say it's been sporadic.
Yes, and I was just trying to make the point that the school is school district property. It's not on. I don't think it falls under the purview of special event permit, but. So. Everyone
Well, it
except the
would-
school, is that, I'm gonna add that to the top?
Then we'd have to.
Well, I'm just trying, yeah, I'm trying to reduce your useless bureaucracy.
Well, I think then we need to look at the public entertainment ordinance. Because it does reference that. And that also probably has not been updated since the 1930s. So
I think this is great if we could just create some exclusions, like. We set a certain number. I think 100 is too low. Interpreters.
okay.
Or would that, we need to discuss the ordinance. Ordinance has the number of triggers on permit.
It has the conditions of it. So would you like to table this until we look at the ordinance and we put that on agenda in February?
Let's do that.
Are we saying on the security and safety plan under 4 bag inspection that they need to be moved? No.
No, that's just a question that maybe we would like to ask them, so if they have a plan.
You ever gone to a show at Shelburne Green?
Mike, we
They
check,
inspect your bag.
Mike, we check coolers at NQID.
It's mostly so that we can charge them for doing it.
I'm just saying.
I'm thinking of a
No,
woman.
I think it's the same concept both places.
I don't know.
Do
too
you want to
many
look
that
at the
have.
1993 typewritten ordinance as a quick teaser before we
No.
table this?
No,
Okay,
no,
I'm
no,
hearing,
no.
I'm hearing.
No, let's look at it after we table.
So in the ordinance, activities, exemptions, activities licensed by Department of Education and/or churches on school or church grounds and on municipal lands are exempt from the requirement to obtain a license to pay a permit.
Good.
So with that wonderful knowledge, how do we feel about permitting?
I think to that extent, we should probably put them up front for the like referencing the entertainment, putting the text of what's gonna qualify or not.
Okay.
Yeah,
As a
I'd
front
like to,
page.
like, make it easy for people to realize this doesn't pertain to me, I don't need it.
Okay, so
Like that party doesn't.
I will edit that.
It's very offensive.
It was a great party. One of the best. Good ask, Anna.
It's on the website.
I know that. Alright, so I think in February, we're gonna have ordinance.
Okay, can do. Is there any other action on this tonight? Okay, thank you again to Tori for moving it forward.
We're gonna keep trying.
All right, that brings us to ahead of schedule, municipal manager and board member updates. Mike, do you have any updates? All right, Kane.
No.
Roger.
We've got Waterbury Winterfest happening next week, starting on Wednesday and running through Sunday.
Tori, any updates?
Yes. Just because I'm excited about this wonderful calendar I just got, if anybody does not know,
Whole bunch of Crossing Brook Middle School students did some art in collaboration with the Waterbury Conservation Commission. And they put together a really cute little calendar. You do have to add your own vertical lines. But it's $10 and it's at the town office and it's cute. That's my update.
Thank you. My updates is that there was a housing task force meeting on Thursday. I was at work, so I couldn't attend. Sandy, I see from the minutes you were there. Are there anything you would like to offer with regards to the last housing task force meeting? The other note I would make for the select board is that Joe Camarada did email updated goals for the year from the housing task force to the select board, along with general data on the status of housing in Waterbury. So good baseline info for everyone that we'll also have for the town report and website. But Sandy, anything you want to add from the meeting? I'm fully putting you on the spot.
We just went over the goals and aspirations and updated those for the next year. We discussed what one of, Kane had made a suggestion, and we discussed that as far as different uses for the money. And that's kind of the big things that happened.
Thanks, Sandy, and thanks for the extra bonus on the spot. And I'll say, because she's in the room, Martha Stackis, that the planning commission continues to work on the town plan. So it's happening in the background and other updates. Tom, updates for the board at all?
A few things. So the FEMA buyout properties that have gone nowhere, which is a couple down Route 2, a couple others on Union. For the first time in at least 6 months, probably 9 to 12 months, I at least have a request for information about those properties, and there's some updated paperwork that has been requested, so that's a good sign. That means there's some hope for those folks to get a number and move forward. Different issue a while back, I believe with Brian Wood, the CDRPC was here and talked about stormwater master plan, and then it says kicked off today. It's a long process. And then final piece, more to come before the select board pertaining to this potentially. So there's another round of CDBG disaster recovery grants. This is the one that got us $1 million from. There's a meeting tomorrow with some state folks and some folks in the House to see about an additional project, and we're really at the exploratory phase. So the exploratory phase requires that you submit a pre-application, which is really a paragraph or two, and from there you have conversations with the state to see if they like the concept, and they invite you to submit the full application. So we're just at the conversation stage. But one of the concepts has been to one of the concepts is based on the premise that the FEMA buyouts don't happen, because again, it's been quite a long time and some folks have heard nothing, but if they don't happen, can you use CDBG funds to purchase those properties, appropriately elevate and flood-proof them, and then they would be managed perpetuity by an entity like Down Street as affordable housing. So we're exploring that conversation, and if that is a concept that the state likes, then presumably there is in fact required select board action to approve the application. And then final thing, Katie Gallagher, Duncan McDougall's, and others are working with the Wilfer for myself. There's some relatively small grants available to the Agency of Transportation. And there's already enough concepts through the Better Connections grant to consider an application for that. And that's being talked about as essentially some additional funding for line striking. So nothing groundbreaking, perhaps some crosswalks around the triangle, but additional funding for things like line striking Waterbury Center. So we're working on that, and Duncan and Katie are really leading that charge. But small scale grant, $10,000, $15,000 in that.
Awesome. Thank you, Tom. I appreciate it. Any other updates from everyone? Sure. Bonus town plan. Yes, go.
And I just wanted to say, last week we had conversations on the local economy and municipal services and facilities, aspirations, goals, and strategies, which is really the crux of the document. On Monday, we're going to do transportation, energy, natural resources, and flood resiliency. If we get through all that, that would be a miracle, but that's what the schedule is. And then February 9th, we're doing housing, community services, and land use. And community services is a new chapter we've identified to sort of cover childcare and the schools, because they're not municipal, so they're not municipal projects. So there's a bunch of community services that churches and extra stuff. And I just wanted to let you know that's what's happening the next 2 weeks.
Thanks, Martha. And thanks to the planning commission for being accommodating when we double schedule this room and kick them into other places with our apologies to do our budgeting. All right, any other notes from anyone? All right, we will go to agenda items for next meeting. I have the warning and the special event permit and the housing trust proposal and the natural disaster proposal. And Rebecca's answer to quote, why the capital funds are so. Are we, anything else?
You know, if you want to discuss or defer to the meeting after, we've talked about zoning enforcement issues.
Oh, yeah.
The only thing is, as I told you, that that's my uncle, I won't be up the next. I don't know if you want
So you can be here. I also should have said in my announcement that on February 2nd, someone from the Stowe Land Trust has asked to present to us, and I received a very long email about it today. That is like all the information I have at this point, but that will also be on the February 2nd agenda. But for the 27th, warning, housing and natural disaster uses and updated event. Anything else? I think we do have an executive session for contracts, is that correct? Great, so we need motions for that, and then we're all set. Thanks, everyone, for coming out tonight.
No, it's more of an information.
What's the next meeting agenda list? Zoning, special event permit.
Not zoning.
I moved to find premature public knowledge, permits replace the town of Waterbury as substantial disadvantage.
Second.
Yeah.
I thought you were giving Cheryl's one to catch up on.
Motion by Kane, second by Tori. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, and then motion to enter executive session.
Move to enter executive session. Is Tom joining us?
I think he wants to go home.
Recording stopped.
Don't necessarily need him to.
And then offer an invitation to the town manager should be.
Second.
Motion by Kane, second by Tori. Any further discussion? All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.